Revolutionary love is about creating collective change through our love for one another. As Valerie Kaur says, it is the choice to enter into wonder and labor for others, for our opponents, and for ourselves in order to transform the world. And she says, this kind of love can only happen in community. It takes all of us, my friends. So stay tuned, because you will have an opportunity later in this episode to join with me and others in making a declaration, a sacred oath to doing your part in bringing about the change you want to see. To quote Valerie once more, an oath is a transition. It's a movement from one way of being into another way of being. So many of us have been resisting. So we are moving energetically into reimagining and rebuilding together. And in order to do that, we must summon all the courage and wisdom that we can and really commit to showing up and doing what is ours to do.
Hello, and thank you so much for watching today. I am so grateful for your presence. One way that you can support this work, reaching those around the world, is to text to give. It's an easy way to contribute and be a part of this mission of transforming lives. Thank you.
Hello, beloveds! Guess where I am? I am coming to you from our Labyrinth building, where we are getting ready for you. We are going to gather in person on June 6th at 9:30 in the morning. We are going to have 50 seats available by reservation, and you're going to be able to reserve your seat today on our website, abqcsl.org. There will be a waiting list created for our next in-person gathering that will happen later in June for any of you who aren't able to get a seat. We know that that is a limited number, but this is how we are going to start getting our feet wet with these in-person gatherings. I also want to tell you that we did a survey. I hope you were able to participate, asking you how you plan to participate moving forward. And overwhelmingly, you all told us that you want both online and in person. And so we are deeply committed to doing that, but we need your help. We need your help to give financially so we can get this building up and running. We're going to be putting in another HVAC unit with HEPA filters and all of those things. We need your help with volunteering so that we have enough support to be able to do online and in person. This is your opportunity to participate in growing love in action by making it happen with us. We know that we have learned so much over this last year, and we can't wait to share with you some of the things we've learned. We've been visioning. You are going to be able to participate in ways that have not been possible before. And like I said, we need your help to make it all happen. You're going to see in this word cloud that I share with you today all the things that you can expect in our in-person gatherings moving forward. Community, welcome, embodiment, a place where you can connect with spirit and with each other. I can't wait for you to meet the teams and the people who've been working behind the scenes this last year, making all of this possible, and I can't wait to get involved with you growing love in action.
A strange necessity has been laid upon me to devote my life to the central concern that transcends the walls that divide and would achieve in literal fact what is experienced as literal truth. Human life is one, and all people are members of one another, and this insight is spiritual, and it is the hard core of religious experience. Says Howard Thurman. Howard, me too. Me too. The central issue of life is that all people belong to one another in this oneness. in this thing that I call God, and we can call it whatever we want, the universe, the divine intelligence, the absolute, the beginning, the middle, the alpha and the omega, that it is one. And because it is one, we are in it together. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all that needs to be said. It is all that ever needs to be taught. And yet I am here to offer a message. So I will continue with the Great Revolution. Revolution is defined as a fundamental change in the way of thinking about or visualizing something, a change of paradigm. And love, Valerie Kaur tells us from her book, See No Stranger, is more than a feeling. Love is a form of sweet labor, fierce, bloody, imperfect, and life-giving, a choice we make over and over again. This labor engages all of our emotions. Joy, she says, is the gift of love. Grief is the price of love. Anger protects that which is loved. And when we think we have reached our limit, wonder is the act that returns us to love. And Reverend Masando Hiroka, he breaks down revolutionary love and he says, it is in this rising up of our consciousness that we rise up in revolutionary love for ourselves, for the other, and for the wholeness of life itself. But first, if we want to be a part of the great revolution, the revolution of love, revolutionary love, we must be willing to have a fundamental change in our consciousness. We must be willing, as my sweet, sweet Howard Thurman tells us, to prioritize and wrap our whole selves and thought and action around this idea, the foundational theology of our teaching of oneness. When we allow that to change our thinking, when we allow that to be the holy, holy uprising in our own consciousness, that this truth, that this perennial truth that has been the truth since the beginning will continue to be the truth from now into eternity, that there is one. And that one is living itself as each and every one of us, which means we are one together, inherently connected, and that we belong to one another. And when we make this the core not only of religion, but the core of our lives, everything changes. Our experience changes. The revolution begins here. And revolutionary love becomes our only course of action when we have that revolution in our own consciousness. It becomes a collective revolution. And Valerie Kaur says, wonder is the act that returns us to love. So when we get into relationship with this idea of oneness, this concept, this principle of oneness, and we really get in relationship with it, and we really begin to put it on and live this truth, it is the wonder that keeps us coming back to it. It is the wonder when we believe, as Valerie said, we've reached a limit. We cannot love anymore. We cannot take any more of the violence, of the crazy, of the division. When we think we've reached our limit, it is this wonder. And I would offer the wonder of oneness that can grow us beyond what we think is possible, that can grow us beyond our own limitations in thought, our own limitations in belief. When we think there is no way I'm sitting at a table with them, there is no way that me and that person or that idea can find common ground. What if we took wonder into that moment? Into the moment where we think there is a divide that cannot be crossed, and we just begin to wonder about how does oneness show up here? How can I tap into this perennial truth and allow it to move me in a way that I have not been able to move before? I wonder what becomes possible when we each commit ourselves that deeply to spiritual living.
Hey y'all, my name is Jaden Edeyemi and I am 18 years old. Justice to me means liberation, and liberation means having the ability to express yourself freely in safe and loving spaces. And I think that liberation of the self first is so important. I think that that is a major way that we achieve justice, is through liberation of the self. And, you know, having the ability to learn about yourself, to understand where you come from and have pride in that. But then I think there's also the very crucial piece of taking the time to look outside of yourself as well, to understand the stories and lives and struggles of others, and giving them a seat at the table, especially those who are most marginalized. And so I think that for me personally, spirituality has a lot to do with this concept, because personally I believe in the idea that we are all unified in some way, unified by a higher power. And so to understand that is to look outside of yourself and understand that we are all connected in some way. And so really this is what should fuel us to have these conversations about justice. The idea of oneness, the idea that we have the ability to connect and learn and understand each other. And really, oneness is justice.
Because this truth, this fundamental truth that Howard Thurman is speaking of, that every great teaching ever speaks of, is the foundation, is the way, it is the how of spiritual living. It is really the only thing we've got to get. It is the only thing that we must devote ourselves to if we say we are about spiritual living. It is the only thing that really needs to inform love and action. It is the only thing that needs to be the ground we stand on, the leaping place we leap from. Is this one idea that we belong to one another, that we are a one people. Now, this is not an invitation to do spiritual bypass and hang out in la, 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 we are all one. And because we are all one, I don't have to acknowledge all the ways that we are having different experiences and different suffering. No, it's quite the opposite. That when we inherently own and embody what is true, we become more aware of what's going on with all the rest of the one. We become more deeply impacted by the suffering of our family in oneness. We become less willing to close our eyes. And we become more emboldened and stronger in that kind of love. Because like Valerie says, the gift of the labor of love is joy. And so when we recognize that the labor of love, the willingness to be fully present and fully here in all that is happening in the world and in our neighborhoods and in our families, there is a joy in that no set of circumstances can dampen. There is a joy available in that kind of love that is greater than any emotional experience we have, that is greater than the price of grief. Because we only grieve when we have loved. And so, yes, grief comes with it. But the inherent experience of our holy nature is so much greater than any temporary emotional experience. Any temporary bout with pain becomes more manageable, becomes more doable, because we've committed ourselves to the greatest love there is, this revolutionary love. The love that is greater than my own self-preservation. The love that is greater than my own little circle of beloveds. The love that is so big, it can include the totality of life itself, the oneness of life itself. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Science of Mind, our teaching, said, "Faith without works is dead. We should not only pray, we should act, each contributing the best they have to the common purpose, each willing to make any sacrifice necessary, not a sacrifice reluctantly made, but as one who offers all they have for two great purposes. One, in a certain sense, a selfish one, for we all desire self-preservation, but the other, in the greater sense, that there can be no individual self-preservation without the preservation of all. My preservation is your preservation." When we begin to understand, truly understand and embody oneness, we understand that. We understand that there is no real self-preservation without the preservation of the whole. When we understand oneness, like really get it, we understand that this planet we live on is a part of that whole, and it too must be preserved. We understand that those folks way over there on the other side of the planet who feel so far away that we can't really wrap our brains around what they might be going through, we understand that they are part of our whole. And we begin to live that truth. We begin to make real spiritual living. You know, that is the third step of affirmative prayer. It's called realization. And realization defined simply means make real. So we take the prayers out of our thought and into our bodies, into our lived experience. Because if we are not willing to feel the grief and the joy and the labor, I'm going to give you that list again from Valerie Kaur. Love is a form of sweet labor, fierce, bloody, imperfect, and life-giving. It is not conceptual. We don't need to sit around and conceptualize or discuss what is happening around the world. We need to allow ourselves to be so present with it that we feel what is out of alignment, that we are moved with what is out of alignment, that we are moved by the joy that is also occurring at the very same time. We allow that to rise in us. We allow that to cause a revolution in our own beings, to cause a revolution in our own consciousness that will move us in loving action. This is the work of spiritual living. And I hate to burst any bubbles, because if you're here for just a really lovely meditation technique that makes you feel peaceful, this is probably not the right place. Because spiritual living does not mean disconnecting from life itself. It means being alive with the Spirit of God, being alive with the truth of oneness, being alive with that to the point where our actions are in full alignment with that truth. That, my friends, is spiritual living. Ernest Holmes went on to say, "For if the whole nation works together and prays together, a great moral and spiritual power, an actual soul force will penetrate the whole world, helping to bring confidence and calm judgment and right action until the crisis shall have passed. Freedom need never be ashamed of itself, nor liberty bow to despair. God is always on the side of right, and faith will always conquer fear." I love that he says, there is no need for liberty to bow to despair. And the reality is, we don't have time to be beaten down by despair. We are greater than that. God is greater than that. There is a power for good that is moving and breathing in our own beings that is greater than any sense of despair. And you and I, because we've said yes to love and action, because we've said yes to spiritual living, we also say yes to liberty. We also say yes to freedom, which means we get to feel what we feel and then return to wonder. Return to wonder, Valerie says, because it'll bring us back to the greatest power, revolutionary love. We must return to our misunderstandings that are often perpetuated by giving power to an emotional experience that it does not deserve. We do it in two ways. We play it over and over in our heads, right? Oh my God, this is so awful. The kids being separated from their parents, walls being obstructed, children dying in epidemic numbers greater than the coronavirus daily from malnutrition. Now, that is some despairing shit. However, we don't get to bow to it. That is smaller than we are. We do not get to allow ourselves to be so weighed down by the horror that then we become paralyzed in it and ineffective. Because when we do that, we are saying to ourselves, and we are saying to life, and we are saying to God, I would rather lay here paralyzed or be in my little bubble of despair and horror than show up as the holy wholeness that I am. That's what that means. And we are better than that. We are emanations of the one. And we are here together on purpose, by divine appointment. And it doesn't mean we need to get on planes or go save the world. It absolutely does not mean that. It means we owe it to ourselves and to life itself and to our appointment itself to discover what we are really made of. To discover and to embody and to devote ourselves to the love that we are. And let that move us however we are moved. Coming back to what Rev Masando said, it is in the rising up of our consciousness that we rise up in revolutionary love for ourselves, for each other, and for the wholeness of life itself. It starts here, my friends. It starts here. And when we find ourselves stuck in the mud of emotion, when we find ourselves stuck in the mud of despair, return to what is true. Because what is true is greater than that. What is true is that there is one life. And it's ours. And when we really get that, when we really make ourselves be about it, we will not bow to pain. We will not bow to tragedy. We will bow to the sweet labor of love. Reverend Masanda went on to say, this revolutionary love is the great work of our lives. And that same work brings us into that state of love, which is a direct experience of the divine. Because it's in that sweet labor itself, as we begin to embody more and more and more, and our arms grow wider and our hearts get bigger, as we labor in that love, as we do the work of that love, it grows our sense of the love. It's not in the hiding, it's not in the protecting ourselves, it's not in the managing the news or managing what we expose ourselves to. It's actually in the labor of love that our capacity for love grows. He goes on to say, every time we act through this revolutionary love, every time we are moved to love ourselves enough to say enough is enough, every time we love another enough to fiercely protect them, to fight for their dignity, to come into a deeper relationship with their struggles and their pain, and every time we allow this same love to bring us into a state of true wonder and curiosity with those we have made an enemy, we are in a state of love. We are in a state of oneness with the divine. That's how powerful it is. That is what we must commit ourselves to. And here's the deal. I know you want to make exceptions, and I know that there are places where we think, all right, I can love this much, but I'm not trying to love that much. I'm not ready for that over there. I'm not ready for that conversation. I'm not ready to confront this thing. Yes, you are. Because God's that big, which means you're that big. And love is strong enough. And with just a little bit of curiosity, a little bit of wonder, we can grow beyond our own edges into more of who we are. And God, that is good. So your homework this week comes from Valerie Kaur's work for revolutionary love. And she says, loving only ourselves is escapism. Loving only our opponents is self-loathing. Loving only others is ineffective. All three practices together make love revolutionary. And revolutionary love can only be practiced in community. So, we are going to declare ourselves revolutionary lovers. There's a declaration that I want you to sign. You're going to see the information on the screen about how to do that, and commit yourself to revolutionary love, to all the love, not just others, not just your enemy, not just yourself. All of it, the oneness. I know when we each devote ourselves to that, there is no telling what becomes possible. I love you so much.
So, if you are watching this right now, and you are willing to make a deeper commitment to being an agent of change, please place your hand over your heart, and wherever you happen to be, speak these words aloud. I, Clarissa Crowe, do wholeheartedly vow that I am a stand for healing, reimagining, and rebuilding my community, my country, and my world. I will, to the best of my ability, summon the courage, the wisdom, and the compassion that it takes to protect and defend those around me, especially those who have been unheard, unseen, and undervalued, and to speak up when I see injustice, but always from a place of embodied love and oneness. I vow to be a stand for peace, dignity, and joy for myself and all those around me, including the ones I view as opponents, and that I will do so with love. Thank you for joining me in this powerful declaration. To anchor this even more deeply, you can go to the link in the video description and add your name to the cause. I'm so grateful to be walking this path with you.